Welcome to the Put on Waivers Media Group, home of the Put on Raiders podcast and the Student Body Right podcast. This is your place for the best breakdowns and the best insight for those who fight on and bleed silver and black. Now, here are your hosts, Dwayne Douglas and Ryan Holmes.
And welcome everybody to the glorious episode of the Put on Raiders podcast. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, along with Ryan Holmes, and we are podcasting off the beautiful shores of the Pacific Ocean. Beautiful day out here in Southern California. PORSBR.BSky.social is my social media, and for Ryan's, it's RHOLM22. The Raiders are the Raiders want you to do what that Kendrick Lamar says: turn the TV off, turn the TV off. Because it's horrible. It's horrible, and probably one of the worst Monday Night Football games or games. Period. I think a lot of folks tweeted that they should still give the Falcons a loss in that game. I know the guys on. I was driving. I was listening to Sirius NFL radio, and they were like, how'd that game come down to a Hail Mary? It's beyond me. It was pretty bad. Ryan, how you doing? And what are your initial thoughts about what you saw the great Raiders 2024 version do against the Atlanta Falcons?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Haven't turned on the all-22 yet, so I'm doing really good. I don't know if I will. My thoughts on the game, I tweeted yesterday a picture of a guy washing his eyes out. Like a chemical spill. That's kind of how I felt watching that. It reminded me there was a Raiders-Chargers game years ago. I think the Chargers were up like 6-0, and Wade Wilson throws a touchdown like in the final 2 minutes, I believe, to James Jett to win the game 7-6. It was a horrible game. Fortunately, the Raiders won that game. They did not win this game, but it was tough. Talking about the preview last week, I mentioned all the Falcons have to do is turn around and hand the ball off and don't do anything stupid, and that's pretty much the game plan they followed. Once Kirk Cousins threw that interception to Spillane, they didn't even try to throw the ball. They beat the Raiders without trying, and then benched their quarterback today. Michael Penix has been named the starter for the Atlanta Falcons moving forward. That's how bad it was.
1 game away. We were 1 game away from seeing Penix. I want to see Penix so bad, but go ahead.
It reminded me a lot, and I see a lot of people trying to back the defense, saying the defense played well once again. They held them to 15 points. But again, the Falcons didn't try. Their quarterback was atrocious. He couldn't move. They didn't want to try to throw the ball. They missed a field goal. Like, the defense played okay. We need to back off. This is the 2006 Raiders defense. It was tops in the league as far as, I believe, pass defense, because they couldn't score. Teams now know the Raiders can't score, so they don't turn the ball over. So it was a tough watch all around. I see a lot of comments about this roster is putrid. AP was set up to fail. He had no chance. This is essentially the same roster. Now, granted, Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs aren't here, but they added Christian Wilkins in the offseason. But essentially, and he's been hurt a little bit, but let's not act like this team has no talent whatsoever. AP with essentially the similar roster went 5-4 last year, and now we're acting like he got handed the worst roster in the history of the National Football League, which is the furthest thing from the truth. Game management, again, by Antonio Pierce was questionable at best. Going down to the 2-minute warning in the first half, Tayshaun Reed of The Athletic asked him today about some of the decisions he made or didn't make in that 2-minute drive. And I don't think AP had even dawned on him that he messed the whole thing up with the timeouts that he had and didn't use, and just responded, "We took a sack, so we took it to halftime." The question was, why didn't you call timeout after you got the first down with over a minute left? They got a first down with a minute left, and they let 30 seconds run off the clock. Then they hit Brock Bowers down the field, and by then there's 25, 27 seconds left, and they use a timeout. Would have been nice to have those 30 seconds back. If somehow they got down and kicked a field goal there, now we're talking about potentially a 3-point game late instead of a 6-point game late. They had 10 guys on the field for the blocked extra point. Like, every week, this thing is getting worse and worse. They had 3 blocked kicks, 2 punts, and a field goal. The same basically punt rush that they got to him a couple weeks ago happened again twice in the same game. They asked AP about it, and he said, well, we just had a miscommunication between the center of the two guards and the personal protector. That can't happen, but it can't happen twice in the same game. It,
Mhm.
I don't know what at this point what Antonio Pierce is doing on the sidelines. He's not managing the game. He's not calling plays. Like I've kind of tried to say there's a chance he's coming back. I still think there's a small chance, but each week that goes by, I think it's less and less likely. And then boom, you saw the report from Josina and Anderson today, basically saying that they're contemplating changes. They're floating that out there now, I think. Because she's been the biggest AP supporter in the media this whole time. She's been basically saying AP was handed a raw deal, he didn't have a quarterback, and now she's kind of flipped her tune all of a sudden. So I think there's discussions going on behind the scenes. Last week, I think I put it at 20%. I think I'll put it at 10% right now that AP comes back.
I would say this too. So when you put out the when you're a analyst, writer, NFL, like person like Josina Anderson, who's connected. She puts out some good stuff. So does Rossini as well. If you're one of the people who put out that AP didn't have a quarterback, just keep that same energy for every single head
Every head
coach
coach.
who does not start their tenure with a all-star, all-pro quarterback. Like it's just I don't want to hear it. But I think you've been texting me that if that's the case, then every head coach would be is should be safe because he didn't have a quarterback, so that means he's safe. So
There's 20 to 25 head coaches in the league. If that was the criteria, should not get
yes.
fired. And the other 5 to 10 have the Pro Bowl quarterback on their roster. Now, I think we're overlooking the fact, and we've stated this numerous times on this podcast, AP played against Gardner Minshew last year. AP was part of that process. He's not the general manager, but again, there is no way on this God's green earth that the Raiders went out and signed Gardner Minshew on day one of free agency and Antonio Pierce didn't sign off on that. There is no way. And then he named him the starting quarterback.
Yeah.
So this is on Antonio Pierce.
Yeah, that and also here's where Antonio Pierce could have done. Once he got hired, and when they were in the pre-draft process, just float it out there. Hey, man, this class of quarterbacks is amazing. Like I mean, it just shifts the pressure off of himself and onto the management to say, hey, you know what? Okay, and then behind the scenes, he could have gotten like reprimanded for it, but he could say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke." But I mean, at least he put the pressure out there to say, "Okay, like we could say, hey, he liked these quarterback class. They didn't put together a package where they were only at 13. They could have moved up at least a spot to get a Bo Nix, maybe a spot to get up JJ McCarthy. I don't think the Vikings gave up a whole lot to move up to get
They gave up like a
McCarthy.
fourth-round pick.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, yeah, that's crazy. Which is crazy talk. So, that's something that you could have done. I would say this about Antonio Pierce as well. If you're not going to call plays on defense as a head coach, if you're not going to call plays on offense as a head coach, then you should be an expert game flow, game manager, like knowing when to call timeouts, knowing when to hey, next drive we got to run the football. I mean, you should be an expert at all things in the middle because you're not actually calling plays on either side of the ball.
No, and we don't need to turn this into the Antonio Pierce needs to go because that seems to be the
Exactly.
rhetoric the last couple of weeks. But just to recap the Falcons game, like again, he had his hand in it. They fought hard. I'll give the team this. They're not quitting, but just because a team doesn't quit doesn't mean he should keep the job. Um, Especially if they win 2 to 3 games. If they win one more game, I still don't think that's enough. So big game coming up for draft purposes. They got the Jaguars coming to town. I know everyone thinks this is a win. I watched the Jaguars game last week, and they actually played fairly well. I know it was the Jets, and they did lose the game, but they ran the ball really well. The offensive line played really well. As bad as the Jets are, they still have a really good defensive line. Like Will McDonald's got 10 plus sacks.
Yeah.
Hassan Reddick's back. They had Quinnen Williams. And the Jaguars went up and down the field. They ran the ball. Mac Jones had a pretty good game. They had a chance to go down and win it. He made a bad throw that got intercepted by Sauce Gardner at the end. But Jacksonville was in that game the whole game. So I don't think this is a pushover with the Jaguars coming to town, especially with all the injuries the Raiders have. And I wish the defensive line played with the same effort they did last night when Max Crosby was on the field. Because when Max Crosby was on the
Yeah.
field getting triple team, those guys can't beat one-on-one blocks. And then they got some pressure last night from a couple of different contributors. So I don't know where that's been all year and why Max not there allowed some of those guys to get close to the quarterback. But at the same time, we were talking Kirk Cousins is a statue with no confidence right now. He just got benched. He wouldn't pull the trigger. He was off target a lot. If there's a mobile quarterback that has any semblance of accuracy last night, the Raiders still give up 25 to 30 points.
Yeah. Yeah, no question about it. I just, just kind of reviewing what we saw with the Falcons and Raiders, and looking forward with the Jags game. I mean, it was to your point too. I was like, maybe sometimes when they have that, they have this opportunity with Max, it's kind of like wait and see what Max let Max do, kind of like Will, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, pass the ball to Will instead of everybody playing as a team. So because like yes, you're right. I mean, I did see some internal pressure. I did see some pressure from the outside. I think I turned the game on immediately, and I saw Chase on just blowing up. Kirk Cousins there as well. So I'm not sure. I mean, they're a mystery defensive team anyway, because we all talk about PG on this program a lot. And there's just games where he's just like, I don't know what's going on. And then there's games where you're like, oh, that was a nice pressure. Where's that been all year? Like, you know what I mean? So I mean,
And then you have Jack Jones, and who knows what Jack Jones is doing.
well,
He
hey,
likes to
listen,
jump double moves, and
hey,
everyone in the
listen,
league watching film and doing it to him.
hey, listen. Nobody got you should have your eyes on your family the way he has his eyes on the quarterback. Because he gets beat on double move every 5 seconds. As far as that is. You know, I mean, offensively, they're just I don't see, even if AFC comes back, if AOC comes back, he gives you a little bit of a puncher's chance, I guess, because they maybe he can get to like the 14, 17 point mark. But unless they get a turnover in their own end, and sometimes even when they get a turnover in their own end, because we saw against Tampa, Chase on makes that interception and they fumble the football right after that. So who knows?
Yeah, I do wonder how healthy Aiden O'Connell is. A bone bruise in your knee, especially that front leg, that plant leg. I'm curious. That's a couple of week injury normally. I know he's fighting to get back. Like he needs to get on the field right now and prove like, hey, I want to be in this discussion next year. He can't do that sitting on the bench. He's been hurt twice now this year. AP is just grasping for straws now, so they just may run him out there because AP needs to win a game. Um, I just don't know. He couldn't move to begin with. I just don't know how mobile and how functional within the pocket he's going to be, even if they play him against the Jaguars. The Jaguars' pass rush wasn't very good last week. That's the one thing I'll give the Raiders. And the Raiders' pass protection it's been okay the last few weeks. I thought it was fine for Ritter last night. He got sacked a couple of times. He ran into a sack, but for the most part, the pass protection's been okay. It's the run blocking that's been an issue. And once McCormick went out, and he's going to be out for the year, McCormick tweeted out, "See you guys next year." So we won't see him again this year, or I think it was on Instagram. So you're going to get a heavy dose of Madison, who fumbled in the game, Abdullah, and maybe we'll see Dylan Lave touch the rock again this year before the year runs out.
I mean, at this point, do we need? I mean, to me, seeing, like, I'm not. This is not a knock on Amir Abdullah, but just seeing him so much on offense, it's just like, dude, what are we? I mean, like, this is just.
It's better than the other options they have right now, though. That's how sad it is.
And that's what I'm saying. It's so sad to see that he's actually on the field that this much. It just shows you how much issues the Raiders have. And again, like it seems like every year they get to the end of the season and we're just pulling people off the street to play football because they don't have the depth on their roster. Anything else from the Falcons game? What were the ratings?
It was
for the
good to see
Falcons game?
Daniel Carlson make a 50-yarder. It was good to see that.
Well, real quick. How, like, have you ever seen a game because you and I we watched so many Raider games in our lifetime. Um, did you see anything? I mean, ever see anything as poorly executed as what they did on special teams in this game? I think that was just really that was brutal.
3 block kicks in a game.
Yeah.
Uh, no, it got. I've also never seen a team, the Falcons, run out their field goal unit to try to get the Raiders to jump off sides on 4th and 5. I've never seen that. If you're going to do that, just run the offense out there and try to do it. You're not hard counting anyone kicking a field goal, and then Raheem Morris took the delay a game and punted. But no, the special teams was not good. Desmond Ridder was not good. They couldn't run the ball. Costly interception, costly fumble. And like I said, the recipe to beat the Raiders right now is the same recipe it was in 2006. Run the ball, kick some
Yep.
field goals, score a touchdown, you win the game.
Exactly. Yep. So 17 points is pretty much all you need, and then after that you're good to go. I did watch because the game got exciting. I did watch the Jags and the Jets
That's last weekend.
almost in entirety. So I'm with you a little bit. I do worry about. I think in that game, which was really weird, that I didn't realize is like at least 4 or 5 times in that game, Mac Jones did run for a first down. So he wasn't really a complete statue back there. They do continue to play hard for a coach who's going to be on his way out. And Doug Peterson, it looks like. So the problem is with the Jags job is it seems like if you take that job, you got to work with Trent. Like, because the ownership loves him for everything I read about what's going on there. But so the Raiders are still. I mean, and I think Brian Thomas is a guy. Everybody talks about all the wide receivers who came out in the draft. He has been a problem in the National Football League. He's been very, very good for the Jaguars. So that could be an issue as well. As soon as the tight end went down, their backup tight end came in and had a great game.
Brendan Strange. Yeah, he had
Brendan
a good game.
Strange,
11 or 12 catches.
yeah. So Evan Ingram was out, so he came in and played well. So, any parting shots on that game? Part of the game coming up this week with the Jaguars.
I think if you're the Raiders, you need to do what the Jets did, and that was get your wide receivers matched up on linebackers. And that's how, Devontae Adams had no catches at halftime, and then he exploded in the second half.
Go in the slot, too.
Big 71-yard touchdown down the middle of the field against Lloyd, the linebacker out of Utah. So the Raiders have to take advantage of that. When they get those mismatches, I'd love to see Trey Tucker get loose. Another quiet game from Trey Tucker. Like he'll hit one and then disappear for 3 or 4 games. This was another game where that happened. Jacoby Myers didn't get going until late in the game, and when the Falcons basically went prevent with 5.5 minutes left, up 15-3, and that's when the Raiders offense started moving the ball. They couldn't move the ball at all before that. Like you said, it was a bad football game to watch on TV in front of the entire country. But I think the Raiders are going to have their hands full stopping the run. They couldn't do it against the Falcons. And if I'm the Jaguars and I have Mac Jones, I'm going to turn around and hand the ball off to Travis Etienne, and then Tank Bigsby. Let those guys get their yards and then play action and get the ball down the field to Thomas and find the tight end. And if they can put a couple scoring drives together, that's all they're going to need to win this game.
Yeah, and I would say for Tucker, tremendous speed. I don't want to have him be on the left side or the right side. Keep that kid in motion. Like, you know what I'm saying? Move him around. Even if you're faking some orbit motion to him, like do something to get the defense keep him making themselves aware of his speed so it can help get people open. I mean, that was some of the balls that were thrown to Brock. You can see how exasperated he was. Like, he was just like, what the blank is going on? This is terrible. So that's where, a big time Brock game could save the Raiders in this game. But until when you lose this many games in a row, I cannot sit there and say that I feel really confident that the Raiders are going to beat anyone in football. It sounds like that in the next following week that Derek Carr is out for the year. So I think, I'm surprised Josh DeBoer didn't say anything about him. It's like not playing in this game to make sure he doesn't lose every team in the NFL. but that's neither here nor there. He is hurt, so he won't be playing an in-state game. It'll probably be Rattler. But let's move on. The Raiders. The Raiders are one of the teams that could possibly have an opening position. I'd love to hear like your rankings of the NFL jobs that could possibly be open.
Right now we have three that are open, so we can talk about those three. I think Chicago is a destination job. If you want to go somewhere that has a quarterback, now they need to build up the offensive line, but there is some pieces on the defense. You do have DJ Moore, you
Mm-hmm.
do have DeAndre Swift, you have Roma Dunze, who they took. You have a quarterback who they haven't protected at all, but you have a quarterback who went number one in the draft. So you have that luxury if you feel like you can coach up Caleb Williams. It's not a great division. It's similar to the Raiders job now, where now you have the Lions, you have the Packers and the Vikings kind of taking off. So they're a distant fourth in the division. Um, but it is a spot where you're going to have a quarterback, and that's a good place to start, or at least someone to develop. I think the Jets job is not desirable very much at all because at this point you're probably not going to have Aaron Rodgers. You're not going to have Devontae Adams. They have old tackles that probably won't be there next year. Alan Lazard is getting up there in age. You are going to have Sauce Gardner. You're going to have Quentin Williams. But they don't have enough pieces on defense. They're going to lose some guys in free agency. I think the offense is going to have to be remade completely. I don't know what kind of owner Woody Johnson is to work for. You're in a division with Josh Allen. So I would put them probably. I'd put them a tie with the Saints, who's going to be the other opening. Okay, because again, the Saints are going to have Derek Carr next year. His contract is just going to make it. He's got some injury guarantees in there, so he probably shouldn't come back and play this year to kick in. So he'll be around next year. It's not a great cap situation, but they've always been able to work around it. They're going to need to get younger on defense, but they do have some pieces on offense. You have Chris Olave, you have Taysom Hill, who's hopefully going to be back. Hopefully, I believe Alvin Kamara signed a contract extension
Yeah, he
during this
is.
season, so he'll be back. So there's some pieces to work with there. I think of those three jobs, like Chicago is by far the best. If I'm looking for a place to go, I would put Jacksonville kind of behind the Bears because you have
Yes.
Trevor Lawrence. Whether you believe Trevor Lawrence is a franchise guy or not, the contract's not favorable, but he's a guy that has shown talent. They have an owner who's going to get out of your way. Like Shad Khan's not involved in the football operations side of it. You're going to have to go coach in London a couple of times during the year because they seem to play two games over there every year. But
Mhm.
you're in Florida. There's no state taxes. You have a quarterback. There's some young pieces on offense like Brian Thomas that they mentioned. You have Travis Etienne. They just locked up Walker Little to tackle. Um, so it is a place that you can go and
Yeah.
potentially win. It's a winnable division other than
100,
Houston. Within
100%.
the division, you're dealing with the
100%.
Colts. Um, I wonder what the Colts are going to do with Shane Steichen. I know Chris Ballard's probably in trouble. He might get let go. Like they just haven't been able to turn the corner for a long time. The quarterback, I think I text you. I watched that game against the Broncos. He might be the worst quarterback in the league. Anthony Richardson is not good.
Yeah.
He's got a long way to go. So I could see the Colts potentially opening up, but then do you really want to work with that quarterback? Do you want a new quarterback? It's got some older pieces on that roster and Quentin Nelson that's making some money. They don't have great tackles on that team to protect the quarterback who you probably don't want to move forward with him. What are you going to do with Jonathan Taylor? He's making a good amount of money now on a team that's probably going to have to rebuild. Do you move
Mhm.
him? It doesn't have, Buckner's an older guy on the defensive line. So I do think Indianapolis has a chance to be a job that opens up here.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens because if they decide to move on from Ballard and they bring in a new GM, he might just whack Steichen and go his own route. I'd expect there to be 7 or 8 openings around the league.
Yep.
I would lean yes on the Raiders at this point. So I think Telesco and part of Josefina Anderson's report is he's distancing himself behind the scenes from Antonio Pierce, which means he's trying to basically, hey, I didn't hire Antonio Pierce. Mark, you hired him. That wasn't my guy. And he's got I would think that he's got guys lined up, him and Tom Brady, that they want to talk to. I would put the Raiders job. If the Raiders get a top 2 or 3 pick, I'd put them up there. I'd put them behind the Bears, but I'd put them right up there with the Jaguars because you're going to have an opportunity to get a quarterback if you want to go get one of those quarterbacks. I would think it's a better job than the Saints. It's a better job than the Jets. Mark Davis is not going to get in your way, but I do wonder how much money is Mark Davis really going to spend on the roster? The Raiders are dead last in cash spending this year, and we got fed all off season. Hey, they have all this cap room in Las Vegas. They're going to be able to do whatever they want. And outside of Christian Wilkins and Gardner Minshew, they didn't do anything. They didn't spend money. So I do question how much money Mark Davis really has to spend here moving forward. I know we're talking about the Raiders having 110 million dollars in cap room this next year, but are they going to use it? I don't know. If we based on what Tom Telesco and Mark Davis did last year, I don't think they are. They're not going to use all of it. And every fan base around the National Football League right now thinks they're getting T. Higgins. Every team that needs a wide receiver and has cap room thinks they're getting him. If I'm T. Higgins, I don't think I'm going to pick the Raiders because they don't have a quarterback. And if they do, it's going to be a rookie. If I have an opportunity to go somewhere that has an established quarterback that's a good quarterback, why wouldn't I do that?
And get paid.
It's the same thing as the Sam Darnold conversation that we've had for a couple of weeks on the show. And thankfully, Louis Riddick mentioned it on the broadcast last night. As much as Raider fans want to skip the draft and sign Sam Darnold, you have to look at it from Sam Darnold's perspective. Why would Sam Darnold want to go to the Raiders? They don't have an offensive play caller. If Antonio Pierce comes back, he's a lame duck coach on a 1-year deal. They don't have a true number one wide receiver. Jacoby Myers is a good football player. He's not a number one in the NFL. He's a good 2.
Mm-hmm.
He can catch the ball and get open underneath, but he's not a field stretcher. They don't have a really good second option at wide receiver. You know, the Raider fans want to love Trey Tucker, but Trey Tucker is what Trey Tucker is. He's a nice complementary piece on a team. He's not an every down wide receiver in the NFL. You do have Brock Bowers. You don't have a running game. You need to upgrade the guards. The defense isn't great. If I'm Sam Darnold, the Raiders would have to severely overpay. And he's going to get a contract in the $35 to $40 million range. I'd want $45 million if I was going to go play for the Raiders. And I don't think the Raiders, if you add Sam Darnold to the roster, are good enough to be a slam dunk playoff team. So why am I going to pay a quarterback $45 million if I'm not going to be a playoff team? So I think he avoids the Raiders. As far as other openings around the league, off the top of my head, you know, is Miami going to come open? I think Miami gives McDaniel another year. I don't think they're going to move on from him.
Is this the first year he didn't make the playoffs? I think it's the first year he didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah, he's also something like 1-15 or 3-15 against teams with a winning record.
Yeah.
What are they going to do with Tua? I mean, obviously they just gave him that big deal, so they have to keep him around. But they probably run it back for another year.
Have to.
Cincinnati probably runs it back with Zach Taylor. Does Cleveland move on from Stefanski? The latest things that you see online are no, like the owner likes Andrew Berry, the owner likes Stefanski. They know they have a problem at quarterback.
Yep.
He's been a 2-time NFL Coach of the Year recently, so he probably stays put.
He probably wouldn't last long in the open market.
No. Does Tennessee one and done Callahan? I would think they might give him one more year. I think Mayo is going to get another year with New England. So as far as the AFC landscape, I don't think there's going to be a ton of openings.
Yeah.
And on the NFC side, you know, I think in the NFC West, those coaches are pretty safe. I don't see Shanahan, McVay, McDonald after 1 year. I don't see. I actually like Jonathan Gannon in Arizona. They've had a decent year. I don't think any of the NFC North teams, if you look at the South, you know, the Saints are open. The Falcons aren't moving on from Ricky Morris after 1 year. Canales looks like he's solidified himself to give himself another year. So it'll be interesting. I do think the Raiders are going to probably fit somewhere in that 2 to 3 range, as long as they get a top pick. If they win a game and they get the 6th or 7th pick and they're not guaranteed to get a quarterback in the draft, it becomes a much worse job.
Yeah, and as far as the Bear job goes, I know that they Marcus Freeman, who they were hot after, took an extension to stay with Notre Dame. So they kind of want to go the leader of men route. So in Chicago, it seems like, so Marcus Freeman's off the board. That means I think Raider fans, we are coveting and talking about Vrabel. Like I think if you look at it and just look at it through Vrabel's eyes, and I heard somebody talk about Vrabel the other day and said that he covets roster construction. I just don't know if he has a chance
I don't
to
know
go.
if that's true.
That it was one of those people who were like kind of close to him, like when he when I forgot the reporter who said that, but like somebody said something about like it's one of those fluff pieces where like they're trying to fluff up the candidate, whatever. Um, and he was
He didn't
talking
have
to.
any control in Tennessee. I didn't when he left in Tennessee and got let go. I don't think it was a power struggle.
I think the thing I read was the current roster construction of the team. So
Okay.
if he so if it was so I don't think if he goes to Chicago, he's not going to have power like that anyway. But I think it's more along the lines of like who's on the roster right now, how much does he have to work with presently, and if you compare the Raiders and the excuse me the Bears, the Bears are probably the better job, even though I mean both teams are in the same position. They're in a division with the three teams who are more talented than them and probably have better coaches than them, and they all have three quarterbacks who are on whom could be on their way to doing some big things. We'll see about what the Vikings do with the quarterback position in the offseason. But yeah, so I mean, it's not. We'll see. I mean, there is a relationship between Vrabel and Brady. We'll see how strong that is. Where he could come in and be the head coach. I haven't liked who Ted. So I almost call him Ted. Tom Telesco has hired in the past as head coaches. Wasn't a big Anthony Lynn fan. Definitely wasn't a Brandon Staley fan. So we'll see what happens there. I think that's something where they really have to get that right. And as far as the money goes, you spoke about the money. I mean, can they get through another offseason where they don't spend something on this roster? Like I just don't know. Like you have holes, and then you have salary cap room. Why outside salary cap money, you kind of have to spend some money to improve the football team. Otherwise, what are we doing?
Well, I think the first year, the hopeful side is maybe Telesco saw that they went 5-4 down the stretch, wanted to add a piece or two, added Christian Wilkins, knew they needed a veteran quarterback, but took a wait and see approach. Like, what do
Yeah.
we have on this roster? He should have had a good idea. They're in the same division as the Chargers.
Yes.
They have a lot of free agents coming up in defense, which we addressed last show. So the fact they haven't handed out any contracts either leads me to believe like they don't know who the head coach is going to be, what the defense coordinator is going to be, what system they're going to run. Is it a 3-4? Is it a 4-3? Is it a man
Exactly.
scheme? Is it a zone scheme? Because that'll determine who you resign. So I think you're going to see a lot of stuff happen in January. For between January, what the season ends January 5th. So Black Monday is January 6th. For about 3 weeks, you're going to see a lot of movement, and that'll determine which players the Raiders decide to bring back. I think 2 points on first on Vrabel. I was thinking about this the other day. Like Vrabel needs a good play caller.
Yeah, he does.
Um, I do go back to his first year in Tennessee. He hired Matt LaFleur. Turned out pretty well.
He
Then
did.
he hired Arthur Smith. Turned out really well. But then he hired Todd Downing. Turned out horribly. And then he followed that up, I believe, with Tim Kelly was his name. Another bad hire. So he's 2 for 4, which is not terrible, but he can't afford to go 2 for 4 in his next stop. He needs to have an ironclad offensive coordinator lined up and ready to go with him when he starts interviewing for these jobs. I think Cliff Kingsbury is a candidate that's going to emerge in Chicago. If they want to go the offensive side, he's worked with Caleb Williams when they were at USC. He's had a good year with Jaden Daniels. If I'm the Bears, I'd want to talk to Cliff Kingsbury. Um, we'll see what happens there with that. As far as the Vikings, I'm not so sure Sam Darnold's even going to be a free agent. If I'm I forget his name, KOH, whatever the front office guy that works, the GM for the Vikings that
Oh,
came from the
Quessy,
49ers.
Quessy.
You could franchise tag Sam Darnold for $41 million, which is about what he's going to get on the open market. I don't think I'm going to let him walk for free. JJ McCarthy's coming off a knee surgery. He missed the whole year. And if this team goes deep in the playoffs with Sam Darnold, Am I just going to let him walk and hope that the rookie quarterback who's coming off a major knee injury is ready to go day one in training camp and take the reins? If you franchise Sam Darnold at $41 million, and I don't know what their cap looks like, but I'm sure they can find a way to make it work, and you get him back on a 1 year deal, that's kind of the best case scenario for the Vikings. If you franchise him and another team wants to come give you draft capital for him, that's a great scenario too. Those sound much better than just letting him walk in free agency, knowing that he's basically going to be the only veteran quarterback on the market, and there is a ton of teams that need quarterbacks. I'm not sure I just let him walk out of the building for nothing.
Yeah, you mentioned Kingsbury. They are yards per attempt. They are one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eighth. As far as completion percentage, they are third. 70%. Let's see, passing touchdowns. They got 19 right now. And then you got some rushing touchdowns as well for Jay and Daniel. So let me see. What's this one? One of the ones that I love to look at is how many big time plays. They got 8 passes for over 40 yards. They have for 20 yards. The Commanders are at 39 passes for over 20 yards, below the Raiders in that category. But they definitely there's been a little bit. It hasn't been. It's been a little bit down the stretch. It's been a more of an improvement for I think Kingsbury than his previous stop, where it just seems like December hits and the offense just goes completely into the tank. They had a close game that should have been a close game against the Saints. They should have been able to close that game out. But he's still working with a young quarterback. I do think Chicago might just go offense there, and then because especially you don't need if you're a Raider
I'm sure they
fan.
want Ben Johnson. Like everyone's going to want Ben Johnson, but he's only going to get one job, or he may not even take one.
Like I was gonna say like is there a job that Ben? I mean, I don't Ben is
I don't think he's taking the Saints. I don't think he's taking the Jets.
yeah. I mean, what job does he want? Like
I
you know
would
what I mean?
say Chicago. Does he want to go to Jacksonville? Does he want to go to Vegas?
Yeah, I
If
don't.
they get a top pick, like, does he want to go? Do the Giants move on
Does he
from
want?
Dable? It doesn't sound like they're going to.
Does he want? Does he want? It seems like the Giants might. It seems like the Giants might move on from their GM more so than the head coach. But I don't
And
know.
then if
It's
let's just say
weird.
he does, let's just say the Giants or Bears for just discussion. Those could be two of the worst offensive lines in the National Football League. He's going to go from coaching a team that has Detroit's offensive line to two turnstile offensive lines. Maybe if Caleb Williams, he can coach up Caleb Williams and spend some draft capital, but in New York, you need an offensive line and a quarterback and a
Yeah,
defense.
yeah. I mean, I'm not. I'm not. Yeah, I'm not. It's weird. Like it's like Washington was the perfect job for him, but he didn't. But he didn't want it for whatever reasons. Obviously, it makes sense. It's six. There's six. They're he wanted 6 years or whatever the situation was. Who knows how much money he wanted? It was reported that he wanted like be one of the highest paid
15
players,
million is what
15
the
million,
report was.
15 million. So it is what it is
And are you going to
as
wait
far as
for
that
him?
goes.
If whoever wants to hire him, are you going to wait until the end of January and hope you get him? Because if you don't, you missed out on a bunch of other candidates.
Yeah, no question about it. So yeah, what are your thoughts about Belichick? He took a job we didn't think he would take. Your thoughts about Belichick being a college coach?
Yeah, the media loved it. I'm not sure I buy it. He's in his mid 70s. Um, is he going to get out there and do what he needs to do on the recruiting trail? Is are they in a position? Is he in a position to re-recruit his entire roster every year? And you saw kind of how he treated professional athletes, where he was very hard on them, the Patriot way, if you want to call it that. It was very tough on a lot of football players that were pros. How is he going to handle 18, 19, 20-year olds with that same type of coaching, that hard coaching? Like some guys will take it. Um, is the elite guy who's a difference maker at the college level who can go anywhere he wants and get millions of dollars in NIL? Is he going to sit there and let Bill Belichick rip him apart in film study week after week after week? And my other side of it is like the NCAA is going to restrict how much time Bill can spend with these players. Like he's not going to be able to be like it is in the NFL and spend 17, 18 hours at the facility and have guys watch film with him and break it down and sit in these meetings for hours after hours, like teaching his defense and doing all that. That they can't do that. So I think it's fun to talk about now. Like, is North Carolina going to be a major factor in college football in the next 2 or 3 years? I'll take the wait and see approach. I'm not so sure.
I think the funny thing about it is I listened to the entire episode of the Todd McShay show, and it is amazing to me how many people feel like I heard people talk about CFP next year with them.
ESPN did a whole segment saying they're going to be in the college playoff next year.
And I'm like, bro, like I just don't. Not that Bill's not smart, not